Hey everybody, welcome to Culinary Characters Unlocked. I'm David Page. On this episode, we're going to the drink side of food and drink with two guys who seemingly know everything about spirits, cocktails, beer, whatever booze you choose. Between them, they have experience bartending, brewing, owning bars and restaurants, even a company that imports agave from Mexico. And together they do a podcast, The Speakeasy. Here are Southern Teague and Greg Benson. Gentlemen, Sother, Greg, how are you? Thanks for doing this.
Very well. Happy to be here, man.
Oh, doing great. How are you?
I'm delightful, or so I'm told.
I would agree.
Yeah, my experience backs that up.
Let's get right to the heart of the matter, given your expertise. What's America drinking these days?
Espresso martinis, unfortunately.
I think there's a pretty big split out there. I think that a lot of folks are drinking the espresso martini.
Okay, let me just interrupt for 1 second. This is, I won't keep doing this, but this is Sother talk. And okay, Sother.
I think Greg's not wrong. The espresso martini is out there and it's strong. But there's the strangest split that I think we've seen in a long time. The other half of the world is drinking martinis again, just martinis. Mostly, in fact, gin. Gin is on a booming rise, I think.
Why?
I think there's something to be said for seeking out something classic, something reliable, something that is malleable, right? People love to have their call for their martini. You know, there's a great quote out there from Robert Simonson that says, martinis are made of gin, vermouth, and plenty of opinions.
Greg, are you seeing the same thing?
I am. I'm seeing a rise of the martini. We actually just wrapped a episode of the Speakeasy where we talked to a guest from Paris who we asked him our standard question at the end of every episode, where are you drinking these days? And he told us that there's a spot that he loves that's doing a butter martini.
A what?
Yeah.
That was my reaction.
Same.
That's disgusting.
I don't know that it is, because in my own experimentations, I've been finding that I'm gravitating more towards something that is still, I feel like a great martini should feel like getting slapped with a velvet glove. And I can see how butter would be a step towards accomplishing that goal.
Yeah, okay, fine. Look, I'm a martini guy, but it's vodka, not gin, so the purists can boo. And secondly, I spent a fair amount of time in what was then the Soviet Union in my journalistic career. Mm-hmm. So if it's cold vodka with the tiniest bit of vermouth, I'm fine. I'm not sure that's a velvet glove, but it gets to the whole question about what is a martini. I mean, I can't sign on to an espresso martini. Once you start throwing all these flavors in, how's it a damn martini? And how's it honest to the soul of what the drink was supposed to be?
Yeah, I don't think it is. I think that largely, David, emerges from the vessel, the glassware. We got to this place where that iconic V-shaped stemmed glass is the martini glass. Thus, anything we put in that glass is a martini, which is definitely the sort of ass-backwards way to do nomenclature that has any kind of accountability.
I'm actually going to disagree with this a little bit.
Aha, we've started a fight.
Yeah, exactly. I know. This is the last episode of the Speakeasy where Sother and I just have a bitter falling out and we don't speak for years.
Oh, good. Let's go viral.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go.
The beef that ends the partnership. Here's my feelings on this. I'm going to use some history to kind of ground my feelings here. If you dig really, really far back, the word cocktail didn't used to mean any mixed drink with alcohol. It used to be a very specific recipe of spirit, sugar, water, and bitters, which is what we now know as an old-fashioned, basically. But there got to a point where there were so many riffs and so many people were taking liberties on what constitutes those ingredients. Because, I mean, if you think about it, first of all, spirit, that gives you a lot of wiggle room. That's just about anything that's got a hefty amount of punch.
Oh, sure. And plenty of research dictates that the original old-fashioned was made of Genever, which was the thing we drank the most in this country when that little recipe arrived, right?
Of what?
Genever, which is basically a juniper-laced malt wine distillate, right? So it's effectively like a whiskey flavored with a non-aged whiskey flavored with juniper. Dutch. Predates gin.
Okay. And I'm damn glad to know that.
Yeah, and records show that we were importing more of that than any other spirit by folds, more than all other spirits combined at the time when the recipe for what we now know as the old-fashioned came about, which again is just a lively mixture of sugar, water, spirits, and bitters.
Exactly. And then you go further down history and you get vermouth in the mix and people are like, well, we can swap this in for the sugar, and that's basically a Manhattan. And there's so many different variations on this, like different subspecies of it, where the word cocktail balloons into meaning what it does today, which is just anything with more than one ingredient that's going to get you a little buzzed. And in that, this is actually a moment where my own personal tastes and preferences run counter to what I think is the correct way to do things. But I think that the ballooning of martini to mean anything that kind of is served up and is fun and celebratory is something that, while not my favorite, I think we have to acknowledge as a legitimate phenomenon in the world of mixed drinks. We can stick to our guns and fight against it, or we can just say, hey, this is the way the culture's going and rock with it. The New York Times at one point refused to print the word tweet because they said it was trendy and it would flare out and it was beneath them as a news agency. And now they have been replaced as the primary place where people get their news by Twitter. You can stand on your principles or you can recognize which way the wind is blowing. And I think this is kind of one of those other situations.
Language, like the martini, is fluid.
Is very fluid, exactly.
Nice line. We're going to get farther and farther and farther into the history and the present of alcohol in a minute, but it's clear you both know your stuff. The question is, how'd you get there?
Practice.
So you come out of a culinary background.
I do.
Where did you grow up and then you went to culinary school?
Yeah, I grew up on the North Gulf Coast of Florida, but that's such a long distant memory. I left when I was 17 and have lived in 12 states. Along that trail, I did go to culinary school at the California Culinary Academy in San Francisco. Later in life, I taught at the New England Culinary Institute up in Montpelier, Vermont. I cooked all over the country, living in all those states. When I wound up in New York, I took a job that was supposed to be short term. I committed to 6 months, standing behind a bar. I'd never been to New York. Sight unseen, I moved here. I rented an apartment over the phone. It was crazy.
You knew something about it. It's not like moving to the middle of Vermont.
Sure, which I also did sight unseen when I went to Montpelier. But on arrival, I ran into a guy that I had worked sort of in tandem with in New Orleans. He was the maitre d' at Herb Saint, and I was the sous chef for Susan Spicer at one of her spots. And, Herb Saint and Susan Spicer were connected. He recognized my name on my resume. He said, you're not trying to apply for a job cooking here, are you? And I was like, no, I'm looking for a job, like maybe waiting tables, just so I can get some fast cash, learn the city, and then figure out where it is I need to work. And he said, well, can you bartend? I said, I think I've spent my career putting beautiful food on a plate. I can put a beautiful drink in a glass. He said, show up tomorrow wearing all black. And again, I committed to 6 months and I stood behind that bar for 3 years. And that was in 2000. So it's been nearly 26 years of bartending here in New York.
And now you own a bunch of bars.
I own 2, what I would call bars that just serve booze and no food. And then I have several restaurants as well that all have bars in them. Yeah.
Okay. Greg, what was your path? Where'd you grow up?
So I grew up in Washington, D.C.
A city that'll make you want to drink.
Oh, God, yes. But I was sort of coming of proper drinking age right when the craft beer wave was really starting. And I got swept up in it. I was like, oh my God, this stuff is amazing. This is really cool. People are doing really interesting things. This is in the early 2010s, right before the massive microbrewery boom.
And the destruction of our palates through IPAs that are bitter just to be bitter.
Exactly. I know. See, this is back when, also back before hazy IPAs were
yeah. Just to hell with IPA. Okay, move on.
I enjoy a well-balanced IPA, but I think that...
Find me one.
I don't know. I think Two Hearted is a pretty good well-balanced IPA. I think that Brewdog, for all their faults, who I worked for a time being, full disclosure, makes some pretty well-balanced IPAs. Some that actually have kind of like a nice malt backbone to them to kind of counter out that palate stripping.
I spent too much time in Czechoslovakia. Give me a Pilsner and I'll go home.
That's fair. Well, I mean, you also have those beautiful Czech Saz hops that just kind of like taste like dirt in the best way possible. And that's also delightful.
So you got into craft beer.
I did. I thought I was going to be a brewer. I thought that was my thing. I was like, this is my future. And I worked my way up to have sort of an apprenticeship in a brewery. And I was like, I'm not good at this. And not only am I not good at this, I don't really have the patience for it.
And it's hard physical labor, dude.
It is. Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. Well, I mean, the payoff is that every brewer I've ever worked with has been just the most, can I swear on this podcast?
Yeah, go ahead.
This is the most fucking shredded dude you'll ever see in your entire life.
I get that a lot.
Yeah, it's almost as good for your body as podcasting. Almost.
Yeah, almost.
Yeah.
Okay, so wait, so you're in the brewing thing, but was this before or after Scotland?
This was post Scotland. Scotland actually helped with this. I moved there. I was in love and I had a bachelor's degree, so I didn't have much else the world could teach me. So I was like, I know everything. Just going to move to a foreign country, again, sight unseen, to follow someone there.
And you worked at a brew pub there, right?
I did. Yeah, I worked for the good folks at Brewdog. A lot of ink has been spilt about their contemporary status in the world of microbreweries, and and bartending at large. I'm not here to comment on that. I will say that from my personal experience when I worked for them in 2012, they treated their employees like gold, which was rare at the time.
Was that where you got into cocktails?
No, I sort of got into it once I realized, okay, I'm not going to be a brewer. Not only am I not good at it, I didn't like that you could come up with a really cool recipe, everything go very well on brew day. You load your beer into the fermenter, you pitch your yeast, and then you're like, okay, can't wait to see how this turns out in 3 weeks, maybe longer, maybe a year.
Or you distill a fine bottle of scotch and say, I'll check it out in 12 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Greg doesn't have that kind of patience. I do.
No, I don't got that kind of time. I'm a busy man. But I was also working at the bar in the same brew pub. And that's kind of when I started messing around with the spirits bottles, all the different stuff. I kind of taught myself how to make the classics. And here I still am a decade later. I think I liked the immediacy of it. And I think there's a little bit of a showman in every bartender. There's something so fun about being able to create something like that immediately in front of people and being able to see their reaction as you put it together and then serve it to them.
Well, but the caricature of this would be like the movie Cocktail.
Exactly.
Which is awful.
Yeah, I agree.
And we'll be right back. What's a good bar? What's a good bartender? Or to use the hoity-toity term, mixologist. Sother?
I think for me, a good bar is someplace where I feel comfortable, where I feel welcomed, and where I feel cared for. Those are pretty simple things on paper to achieve, but maybe in real life, they're a little bit more difficult to capture.
How do you achieve them at the bars you own?
We have a bunch of rules, and most of the rules at my bars, I'll speak mostly to Amori Margo, it's my oldest bar. Most of the rules at the bar apply to us. The guest is our guest. Like, we don't really apply a lot of rules to you. So every single person who comes in the door gets greeted immediately. Within 10 seconds, we have a menu in your hand. We don't lay it down on the bar in front of you, put it in your hand. We look you in the eye and say, hi, welcome, here's the menu.
An alcohol menu?
Yeah, that's all we have. No food here. And then within 30 seconds, we're back with a glass of water. Like, these are just steps of service, but these are the kind of rules that we've adhered to this whole time. And these are just ways to make the guest feel comfortable and welcome. At Amor specifically, we boast the world's largest collection of Amari, and I know you're an Amaro fan. You're a fan of Averna.
I am.
So we boast the world's largest collection of Amaros, the world's largest collection of tincture bitters, which are the things like, Angostura, Peychaud's, etc.
Okay, but let's back up for anyone who doesn't get it. Define Amaro.
An Amaro is a bittersweet liqueur. Think, Campari in your Negroni. That would be considered an Amaro. Think Jägermeister from your college days. That would be considered an Amaro.
Don't make me consider that.
It's part of the pantheon. So those are what Amari are. And then bitters, again, are the littler bottles that are on the bar that we're putting a few dashes in to make, to finish off the seasoning, we call them, to the cocktail.
What's Becherovka? Is it?
It would be definitely considered an Amaro. Becherovka, cinnamon and clove flavors from the Czech Republic. Well, I'm sure you drank some with your Pilsner.
There's none left when I left.
They've re-upped their stock in your absence. What I'm driving at, though, is that specifically at Amori Margo, generally speaking, the bar itself is quite intimidating to the guest. So we kind of go above and beyond the pale to make sure that we are welcoming, accepting, and right on top of you. That rapid fire of greeting, menu, water, that's all to say you are in the right place. You have walked into the right place, whether you know it yet or not. You've walked into the right place. And then we follow that up with guidance, support, and tons and tons and tons of readily available and free to you knowledge.
Well, hold on. Greg, how many bars have you walked into that really do that?
Oh, yeah. I didn't say that a lot of places really do it.
That do what? Everything Sother just described?
Everything Sother just, that seems, if I could find that bar, and I don't live in New York, Sother, so yours ain't it. For most people, is it the elevated opportunity to experience something wonderful, or is it just, screw it, I'm going to have a drink?
I think it's the opportunity to engage in the social aspect of being a human being. Because we say this all the time on our podcast, it's cheaper to drink at home.
Yeah.
Full stop. If you want a drink, you can just go down to, I don't know, I live in New York City. Maybe everyone can't go down to the corner bodega, but surely you're within driving distance of a gas station that has beer.
Is it okay to drink alone?
100%. Yeah. I think these things we've adopted as norms that can't drink till after 5 p.m., can't drink alone. Listen, if you want to have a drink, have a drink.
Sother, I read that you start the day with a drink.
Sort of. Yeah, there's a bitter called Underberg, which is a tincture bitter technically, but it's you drink it all in one go. It comes in a little 3/4 of an ounce bottle. Their slogan is Underberg after a good meal. I don't drink coffee. So when I wake up in the morning, I have this little shot of bitter instead of coffee.
Does it have alcohol?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's like 44% ABV, so 88 proof. So yeah, basically I'm taking a shot in the morning. But don't forget, like, bitters, at least historically, are in the same sort of like vein as medicine. So this is just my little shot of medicine in the morning. Bittering agents activate your digestive system, right? So So just like you have your coffee in the morning, which is bitter, coffee is quite bitter, it kicks your system into gear. So in the morning when I have my Underberg, it's just to kind of, trying to be delicate on the show here, but it gets things moving. Right?
Glad to hear it. That's good.
Yeah. And then then I'll have one of those after dinner at night as well. So I drink a couple of those every day.
Well, you talk about the rules. I ordered a Calvados before a meal in a restaurant in Paris once, and the waiter pretty much spit on me because you can't have that before a meal. And I like Calvados, and so there are rules.
I bet every Calvados maker on the planet would disagree with that waiter.
And in terms of starting the day, I mean, Churchill drank all day, so and that worked out fine.
Yeah, he did all right. But I would like to go back to your question to Greg. You asked him how many bars are out there that do what I do at Amore Margo. I think it's worth noting we ranked number 23 best bars in the world on the 50 best list. That's the highest we ever got, is number 23. Like, my places are unusual, but I think that that's something to strive for. But I also think, to your other question about like, what if you just want to get a beer? What if you just want to, like, what's your experience? What are you looking for? The analogy that I've used many times in the past is to say, if you're feeling fish, we can go to lunch at Eric Repair's well-known seafood restaurant here in New York, or we go to McDonald's. They both serve fish. What's your expectation of that fish is the different question.
There is a level, even today, of moralism and judgment.
Oh, for sure.
Surrounding alcohol. First of all, guys, is it okay just to go out and get shit-faced on purpose?
Yes.
100% yes.
Gonna hit the buzzer on that one first. Yes, absolutely.
You did.
And why? I mean, it's bad for you. Your liver could fall out. You could get hit by a cab.
I wouldn't recommend it every day, but the old saying, moderation in all things, including moderation. Like, some days you got to kick the doors in.
Greg, you jumped at the answer and then did not extrapolate, so.
I think my answer speaks for itself. No.
Okay, if you're going to go out to get plastered, is it a waste to do it on good booze?
I would actually say it's kind of a waste to do it on cheap booze because, as Sother sort of alluded with his answer, you're kind of treating yourself. I mean, I'm thinking of the last times that I deliberately planned for a hangover, and there are things where, like, it was a friend's wedding, or it was my team was in the World Series, or something of that nature.
You live in New York, that doesn't happen.
New York's not his team.
Yeah, I'm from DC, and that also doesn't happen for us down there.
Oh, yeah, okay, fine, yeah.
But I think that if you are going to go out there and be like, you know what? Tonight, I'm just going to let it all hang out. I've cleared my calendar for tomorrow. I'm going to just have fun. I'm making adequate plans for the consequences. I've got a plan to get home.
I've got bail money. I've got my lawyer's number.
Yeah, I've got my lawyer's number written on the back of my arm. I'm good. If you do that, to just rip shots of like Montezuma tequila and Bud Lights all night is kind of a waste. Treat yourself to something you're going to enjoy. If you're going to be decadent, be decadent. Make the whole experience be something that is just pleasure for pleasure's sake from beginning to end is how I feel about it.
I just follow the rule of, if there's 3 bottles of wine and one of them is a very fine wine and the other 2 are not so fine, you drink the fine one first. So you're sober enough to enjoy it. And then you drink the other 2 and you don't care because you're drunk.
Coming right back. Maybe I'm wrong, but when I hear someone order a sweet, multi-ingredient mixed drink in which you'll never be able to identify the alcohol, and then call for an expensive brand of alcohol to be used in it, I sneer. Am I wrong?
If I'm behind the bar, my pupils turn into dollar signs like an old Warner Brothers cartoon. So there's that aspect to it.
I think what we should get away from is trying to like pigeonhole people. If you want to drink Grey Goose in your Bloody Mary, that seems a bit foolish to me because tomato juice is going to cover up any nuance that vodka had on its own. Any old vodka will do in this scenario. However, if that's your loyalty or if that's what makes you feel good, then do that. I'm not the sort of taste police. I definitely have had some occasions at places that I've worked in the past where I've thought to myself, this seems just crazy to me. We had a Louis XIII on the bar at a spot I worked at in Midtown 25 years ago, and a very famous NFL player came in and had cognac and ginger ale using Louis XIII.
Pardon me, I have to go kill myself.
Yeah, but that's his money to spend in the way that's going to make him feel big or strong or happy or fulfilled or whatever, or even just that he wants to support the bar and give us a big chunk of money, but he's like, I'd have to order 1,000 drinks to pay for this one drink. Who knows what his motivations were, but he came in more than once to do this. So it's not up to me. Once you've placed the order and we understand the transaction that's about to take place, then it's entirely up to you. And all I want to do is make sure you, again, those things I listed before, I want to make sure you feel welcome. welcome, comfortable, and cared for.
Okay, let me go to the next step. So much of alcohol sales is marketing.
So much.
Yeah. I watch as various brands, various labels become perceived as good or perceived as, I've never had this, so I'll name a brand.
Sure.
Casamigos Tequila.
Yeah.
Yes, it's George Clooney and another famous guy, or was until they sold it for all the money on earth. It became the tequila to drink. And Greg, I know you actually have a business that brings agave in.
I do. I also have to ask, before I give my true feelings on Casamigos, how good is your legal team on this show?
I married my lawyer literally from NBC, so go for it.
I would just say, again, I can only offer my opinion. You know, I'm asked for my opinion a lot. I sit on the judging panel of both LA Spirits Awards as well as New Orleans Spirits Awards, which are those things when you go to the liquor store and you see those things around the neck that say, got a 98 at LA. Like, I'm one of those judges. So I can give you my opinion. My opinion is it's tequila that largely tastes of the additives that they add to it, which again, I'm not opposed to additives. I know a lot of folks out there are literally just opposed to the word additives. That doesn't necessarily make or break the thing. It just changes the thing so much. So one of the many additives that tequila makers use is vanillin, and this one has a lot of that. They'll add oak flavors to get in there as well. They'll add glycerin to give it more body and mouthfeel. Obviously, they can add sugar. There's plenty of things they can add. It's just that once you get so far away from what the thing is supposed to taste like, in my opinion, we've left it behind, right? Blueberry vodka is no longer vodka. It is a blueberry drink now, right? So this tequila tastes to me so much of vanillin that it almost comes off as, am I drinking sort of a watered down vanilla extract that has, whispers of tequila behind it? So it's just not for me.
And Greg, I have a good lawyer. So what were you going to say?
I'll echo everything that Sother said. And I think that it is a brand that has been able to coast on a very well-known star and, frankly, a lot of really, really good marketing without actually producing a good product.
And what is a good tequila? I mean, when I go to Mexico, I end up drinking Don Julio. Am I making a good choice? Am I making a bad choice? It's what they seem to have at the bar, slightly above the bottom.
Nothing wrong with Don Julio. An analogy that someone used with me the other day regarding this sort of exact topic was bread. There's nothing specifically wrong with general loaf of white bread.
Oh, yes, there is. But I get the point you're making.
But if it's sitting right there next to a crusty loaf of, artisanal bread from the local bakery, in my opinion, the choice is clear. But maybe in the consumer's opinion, there's a lot of mud here.
Greg, you bring in agave. What's a good tequila?
I like Tequila Ocho. Tequila Ocho is a good one that I go for. Lost Explorer, that's a new one that launched recently. That's pretty good. I drink a lot of Espolón.
Espolón is good. Siete Legues is great. There's plenty of great tequilas.
And what makes a good tequila?
It has a freshness to it that I think is unique to that particular spirit. It's very difficult to kind of describe flavors because I'm like, I don't know how I would describe the flavor of a banana, but I know it when I see it and I know the way that it makes me feel. But there's something that's just very grassy and fresh and almost kind of playful with the tequila, I think.
Yeah, tequilas often taste to me like they're from the place that they're from, which is Mexico. Tequila often has notes of cilantro. It's got obvious notes of agave, which is, I know it's hard to wrap your mind around what agave tastes like if you haven't been to a palenque and tasted it, but it's an aloe plant, right? So imagine tasting some of the aloe, right? So it's got this sort of like aloe-y, a little bit cilantro-y, lots of white pepper typically stands forward in tequilas, and a little bit of like citrus, like lime. If your tequila alone sort of has hints and nuances towards what you're probably going to drink it with, maybe I'm going to put some lime in this, maybe I'll crack some pepper across the top of my margarita, you can probably bet that you're on your way. There's another good little thing you can do specifically with tequila. Put a couple of drops in the palm of your hand and rub it pretty vigorously with your other hand. And if it becomes sticky instead of sort of evaporating, because it's mostly alcohol, it should evaporate. We've probably got some additives in here that are gumming up the system, literally. And then there's a tremendous, speaking of tequila specifically, there's a tremendous resource out there and it's called Tequila Matchmaker. And it's an app. And these guys go through and they look at every NOM, N-O-M, which is for every distillery that's in Mexico, they get a number and that number is on the bottle. And you can look up any tequila and it'll tell you the NOM, and not always 100%, but a good indicator is if that NOM is only producing a couple of labels. You go to a NOM sometimes and you'll see they're making 40 tequilas. That means they're just down there waiting for anybody to come and pay them to put something in a bottle with their label on it. So you're typically looking for people who are doing the old adage of like, do one thing and do it well. You find a tequila that's kind of making one, maybe two, even up to 5 labels of their own, not just contracting out to everyone. That means they're paying a little bit more attention. Find tequilas that have a cleaner, fresher flavor. Do that little test on your hand to see if it's tacky, then that'll put you at least in the right direction.
We were shooting some TV thing in Jalisco, and we went to a small, tiny family-owned, I guess you call it a distillery. They made tequila. And it blew my mind.
Oh, yeah.
And they were like, 4 people, and they had do you call it a kiln? What is it, where you're burning the agave?
Al horno, it's called the oven, right? It's just a big oven.
By the way, getting ready for our chat today, I looked up a few things. I didn't realize this. More tequila is used in cocktails than any other spirit in America these days.
Oh, decades long, number one cocktail ordered in the world is the margarita. Decades. And then you back that up with inside the top 5 is the Paloma, also tequila.
What's in a Paloma?
Palomas are tequila grapefruit soda. So in Mexico, it's tequila and like Jarritos grapefruit soda. And most of the rest of the world is tequila grapefruit juice and soda. And then there's the Batanga, which came along and got really popular again. It's been around for a long time, but it's effectively tequila, Mexican Coca-Cola in a salted glass. There's a lot of tequila cocktails that are kind of at the top of the board. And why is that? Frankly, who knows what drives taste? Again, at the top, you're asking us what we think is kind of dominating right now. And I said it's gin. Greg said it's espresso martini, which would be vodka. Now we're talking about tequila. There's plenty of choices, and there's plenty of folks out there who are interested in each one. And some folks like us, I think, are interested in all of them.
I could take a swing at the why. I think I know why tequila is so popular.
Why?
Because it feels like you're on vacation.
You can do that with rum too, I guess.
Yeah, you can, but rum, I think by nature of the fact that it can be produced anywhere and also has the sort of like rum and coke connotations where people are used to using it purely as a way to get intoxicated when they're 21.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I think that tequila has a very distinct flavor that you can nail down that you're like, yes, this is that flavor. This is that memory. This is why so many people I talk to are like, I can't do tequila because I had that one bad experience where that guy convinced me to snort a line of salt and squirt a lime in my eye, and now I can't do tequila anymore. Just to pick a random hypothetical thing that may have happened to someone at some point.
Randomly, hypothetically speaking, when someone was a journalist and he may have stumbled into a Mexican restaurant and bar in Marseille, his crew might have had to drag him out at the end of the evening because he was quite seriously negotiating to buy the place.
Yeah, see?
Yeah.
No names will be mentioned.
Yeah, exactly.
We've all been in these situations, right? These are universal experiences that every person has.
This is how one learns their boundaries. To push them is to learn them.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
But I think your anecdote in Marseille kind of speaks to my point a little bit.
To this day, I regret not having purchased the location.
Never forgave the people who dragged you out kicking and screaming, did you?
No, actually, thank you, guys. Now, but hold on. Let me jump in here. I would have assumed, and I don't know why I would have assumed vodka was by far the number one spirit.
That was a different question. You said cocktails, right? I think vodka, there's stickers out there that say vodka pays the bills that you'll see on the cash register at even fancy cocktail bars. Vodka is the dominating thing that gets used, but not in any specific thing. Very famous Japanese bartender, Ueda-san, he famously said, vodka is a celebration of the mixer. Because vodka being as neutral as it is, it can mix with anything. So vodka gets drank the most because it's the thing that you can hide the most, I think, right? It's for people who want the result, but not the flavor.
But I'm a vodka fan. I spent a lot of time in Russia and developed an appreciation for their appreciation for vodka. What shocked me, and this was the old days, I don't know what it's like now, but when it was the Soviet Union, the Russians had no access to Stoli, which at the time was perceived as the class vodka. The stuff you would get in a Russian bar was pure vodka. The Stoli was reserved to be sold at the dollar stores to tourists. But I think a good vodka does have a good taste. And it's not the taste Grey Goose adds that doesn't taste like vodka. I mean, I just happen to enjoy a chilled vodka. But I read some comments from you, Sother. You're not big on vodka at all, apparently.
Yes and no. If you dug a little deeper, you'd find that we don't serve any vodka at my bar, that's for sure. But that's because of what I just said. I don't find, so let's go back to my culinary background. You know, I can go into the kitchen anywhere and I can absolutely bang out some delicious soup for you. I give you the option. Do I start making the soup using stock or water? I think every time you're going to say stock. Well, if I'm making a cocktail, I'm not starting with vodka. But that doesn't mean I don't like it. I have it. It's in my freezer where it belongs. So it's as cold as it can be without me having to add ice and dilute it. And when I drink vodka, for me, food is the mixer, which is basically how it is in Russia and Ukraine and places that drink a lot of vodka. You know, I want something salty, maybe some salt and vinegar chips. I want maybe caviar if I'm on a baller budget. I want some chicken liver pate, you know, salty, rich, fatty. These are the things that I want to sip vodka next to. And I literally always have a bottle of vodka in the freezer.
Well, vodka and caviar is there's nothing better.
Yeah. I mean, that's the classic Russian combo right there. Yeah.
What surprised me, what I didn't realize, and you guys know the history, I don't, I'm guessing, but it's not like we in America invented flavored vodka. When I used to work there were a billion kinds of vodka. There was wheatgrass vodka, there was pepper vodka. And I came to believe that vodka was just like the only spirit they traditionally could make or get. So they produced a wide range of different alcohols, all using vodka.
If we do some just quick zooming out, and I don't want your listener to take this as gospel, but if we think about any spirit that's on the back bar, they all started as beer of some kind. We have to have an alcoholic product to distill it into a higher alcohol product. We can't start with water. We have to start with something that has alcohol. So we have to make a beer, and it's called distiller's beer or wort. So like, let's use bourbon as the example real fast. If I take some corn and I put it in a bucket of water and then I distill it, well, I've got distilled water. But if I take some corn and I put it in some water with some yeast and I get some fermentation and some alcohol out of that, now I've got this corn beer and I put it through a still. Do I have bourbon? No. Now I've kind of got vodka. Comes out of the still, clear as water and pretty flavorless. I take that clear as water, pretty flavorless distillate and park it in a brand new charred American oak barrel for 4 years. And now I've got straight bourbon whiskey. So it's kind of what happens after the fact. So everything comes out of the still as basically vodka. Then it becomes what it becomes. You know, the process is the same to make any distillate. It's really what happens after it comes out of the still itself that makes it into whatever it is with a label in the end.
Is the world of drinkable alcohol culinary?
1,000%, I believe that. Yeah. Every step of the process, especially when you're talking about things that have multiple processes like mezcal. A good friend of ours, Lou Bank, who's been on our show a few times, he talks about how there's 400 decisions that have to be made in the process of making mezcal. And if you split off on any one of them, you've made something entirely new. So you have to think about flavor in versus flavor out. You have to think about the length of time that it's going to have to ferment versus distill. Once it's distilled, how long does it sit in barrel or in steel or in glass? What additives do you use? Do you put any herbs, spices? Is it going into wood? There's tons and tons of questions that have to be answered in the process of making any alcohol that are all based on flavor, which is certainly culinary.
What about the intersection of alcohol and food? If you're eating food, you can pair it with wine, you can pair it with beer. What about spirits?
I personally love pairing food with spirits. It's a bit more difficult because you're dealing with a higher proof. So what you need to do is either drink less of it, smaller glasses, or you make cocktails so that you're bringing the proof down. And in fact, I'm really glad you brought this up because I didn't prime you, but my very good friend Tim McCurdy from Vine Pair and myself are starting our own podcast called Sauced. Tim and I are both former chefs and current cocktail aficionados or nerds or whatever you want to call us.
We'll go with nerds. That's fine.
Yeah, nerds is good for me too. What we do is we talk about a recipe that involves alcohol. So for our first episode, we did beef bourguignon, and we break down the recipe by every piece, and then we put it back together as we think we see it should be done. And then we spend the second half of the show talking about what cocktail we might drink with that dish. So in this case, there's lots of red wine in the beef bourguignon. When we're adding the mirepoix to make the beef bourguignon, we're aromatizing the wine. Aromatized fortified wine is vermouth. So we talk about, well, this drink is from France, so maybe we'll use cognac and vermouth, and that's called the Harvard cocktail. So we'll have a Harvard cocktail while we eat.
I want that exact menu at home tonight.
All right.
That sounds fantastic.
Thanks, man.
Well, Sother, you're free tonight, right? You can just pop over there and whip up something.
Well, Greg, okay, pair me a cocktail and a meal.
Oh, man. Cocktail and a meal. Well, I tend to go by sort of regionality. If I'm making something that is Mexican inspired, I'm probably going to reach for something with tequila. If I'm making pasta, I'm probably going to reach for something that has Amaro in it. In terms of spirits pairing, I really like spirits with dessert. The thicker, more sort of decadent, very kind of like mouth-coating things that we tend to use at the end of the meal that are very sweet. The burn of the booze on both you experiencing it as a thinking land mammal level, and then just like on a chemical level, it really does kind of like remove that off of your tongue. It really much is a palate cleanser.
Well, Drambuie goes on any ice cream.
Exactly. Yeah. Actually, to be honest, my personal favorite is this stuff. I don't know how it's pronounced. Borsky? Sother, can you help me out here?
Oh, yes, borschi.
Borschi. There we go. Yeah.
What is it?
It's under the category of what are called punches, but it's not in the way you're thinking of punches. It's a cocktail, but a punch is a kind of like rich Amaro that has notes of butterscotch. So it's got this kind of like rum-based, butterscotchy, bitter vibe.
I feel like this is a confession I should make, but for years I enjoyed, 43?
Yeah.
That almond.
2 of those and you're 86th.
Yeah, you're gone. And it's
43 and 43. 43 means 43.
Allegedly it has 43 ingredients, but I think mostly it has gasoline and a couple of almonds and you go home. What are the trends? What's percolating in the world of drinking?
Man, I think the field is currently so wide open with not only the items that are on the back bar that you can employ and use in the drinks, but now the sort of arsenal of weaponry we have in the techniques that we can use to make those drinks. Rotary evaporators used to be a completely foreign item to bars, and now you see them at lots of bars.
What the hell's a rotary evaporator? It's a foreign item. I know that.
Yeah, you might see one of these on the back bar. It's a vacuum distillate machine. We took habaneros and pureed them and put them through the rotary evaporator. And what we get is a distillate, again, that's clear as water, the aroma bursting of habanero, but capsaicin does not translate through a distillate. So we get this very habanero aroma, and aroma dictates 90% of flavor.
Without putting you on your ass.
With none spice, zero. Capsaicin doesn't come through. And, and habaneros are a pepper and peppers are flower. So you get this really floral, you smell it and you're like, oh my God, that's going to be so hot. And then you taste it and it's just all the florality and all those parts. Anyway, rotary evaporators are out there, centrifuges using immersion circulators and sous vide and doing what's called switching, right? Switching is when you put, let's say, apple brandy into a shallow pan and put it in a freezer and come back every couple of hours and scrape the top that you're scraping off the ice. You weigh that ice as you go. And now all you're removing is water. So now you've made a higher proof product, but you've removed a lot of water and you can switch that. So you say it was apple brandy. What if I took all the water out and put back in apple cider? Now I've like doubled the apple of my apple brandy, right? So there's just so many techniques out there that I can't predict what's next. Maybe Greg can.
Greg, what's next?
What's next? I think what's next is we're going to see, I don't know, I could be totally wrong about this, but
feel free.
That's the great thing about predictions.
I think we're going to see this high-low divergence keep going on. That's a trend that I've really been watching for a while. This idea that people want a Miller High Life in an elevated setting, or they want a 12-step, 12-touch ice-cold martini served in a paper-thin glass in a dive bar.
Why?
It's dress up. It's playing pretend. You're pretending that this martini is kind of like a beverage of the people, or you're pretending that this Miller High Life is the greatest thing that you've ever tasted.
Well, it's like Pabst Blue Ribbon. You're pretending it's drinkable.
Exactly.
Well, I think what Greg is saying is also like, it's very common in the food world too. Like look at every restaurant that's hitting right now. They've also got their burger on the menu, right? You can still go here and get this beautiful pressed duck that comes out tableside in its hole and they carve it next to you, or you can get the burger.
I was actually speaking on the podcast with the chef, co-owner, and his wife of the restaurant in Minneapolis, Boucheron, that won the James Beard Award as best new restaurant. They were talking about financial viability of restaurants, and he said, look, I don't want to put a burger on the menu, but if I have to, I will.
So, I spent most of my career, well, all of my career before being behind the bar for 25 years. About 12 years I spent running restaurants and being the chef. And I can remember quite clearly at lineup speaking to the team of waiters and saying to them things like, guys, if you sell one more lamb, we're going out of business. Sell some chicken, right? You got to sell the higher margin items to get us through. And I think that that's what restaurants are constantly going through. I can't think of a restaurant that I know and love here in New York, on that scale, nice, quote unquote, nice restaurants that doesn't offer a burger.
Yeah, and Pat LaFrida is counting his money as a result.
One of the hardest reservations to get in New York City, in all of New York City right now, is Fort Charles. Fort Charles Prime Rib is the name of the restaurant, and they have a burger. And people make a reservation for months in advance to go sit and have a burger. It blows me away. But that's the high-low that Greg is thinking. And I think that you're not wrong, Greg. High-low has been trending for a bit, and I think it's not going to stop.
Well, we'll raise a Pabst Blue Ribbon to that. Gentlemen, this has been an absolute delight. Let's do it again down the road. I can't thank you enough for being here.
I'd love that.
Man, really loved it. Thanks for having us on.
The Speakeasy podcast hosts Southern Teague and Greg Benson on Culinary Characters Unlocked. I'm David Page. I'll see you next time. And check out the Culinary Characters Unlocked Substack.